fire, civilization, computers, Snickers bars. These are just a few of mankind's greatest inventions. Today, we're looking into the ones that can help you win cash, prizes, and bragging rights amongst your friends. Of course, I'm talking about the wheel. Yes, the wheel changed everything. Transportation, machinery, pizza cutters. And in this video, I'm going to be putting the wheel to work for a PowerPoint game. I mean, think about it. How amazing is it that just spinning a circle around on a screen can keep a virtual Zoom call filled with people so wildly engaged?
You start the spin. All right. Big money amounts.
Go, Philip. I hope you get everything you deserve.
I know you're excited, but you need to go back over to your area.
I need to go back over to my area.
That's right.
And look, if you followed some videos and tried this before and thought that building this wheel with a pie chart was a little confusing, don't worry about that. I've got a second method that I'm going to mention in this video that's going to make this whole process a little bit easier. It's one I use personally. Trust me. I'm JJ Atkins. I'm a graphic designer, an instructional designer, and the real deal slidesmith. I've spent decades turning boring content into slideshow magic, and today I'm going to show you how to build an animated spinning wheel from scratch right inside PowerPoint. It's going to be a rotation revelation here at the Slide Hustle. Okay, welcome to the Slide Hustle, everyone. I'm JJ Atkins, and if you're returning, welcome back. Now, I'm going to jump right into our subject matter for today. We're going to get into the point of the video, which is to take a look at the amazing spinning wheel. So here it is. This is what we're here to see. Fairly simple concept. We have a button that's been built in the center of the wheel, has a little play arrow on it. Click it, the wheel spins. Click it a second time, the wheel stops. Now, this video is going to feature two options for building the wheel. Check the description if you'd like to see some timestamps to skip around. The two options are really related to how this wheel gets built. Option number one is the one you'll see on a lot of other videos out there. So if you've already seen that and you're already familiar with how to build this in some sort of a pie chart, feel free to skip ahead to option number two. I actually find option two to be a little bit simpler. I do want to take a moment to talk about option number one, so let's go ahead and get right into it. As I mentioned before, we're going to start by inserting a chart. You can find that at the top ribbon under the Insert menu. Under the chart, I'm looking specifically for a pie chart, and this isn't going to be anything fancy. The regular old 2D pie will work just fine. Once I select it to enter, a pop-up of an Excel spreadsheet is going to appear. And this is where I really think this gets a little bit complex. It's important that our pie chart has several pie wedges that are all the same size and shape. And when we talk about the size of our pie wedge, we're really talking about parts of a 360-degree circle. So we're going to have to do a little bit of math here, and that's, again, where this gets a little bit complex. I'm going to do some simple math and say that we want 10 total pie wedges divided by 360 degrees in a circle equals 36 degrees per pie wedge. So 36 for 10 different pie wedges. Now I want to assign a value to each one of those pie wedges. And in this case, I'm going to put point values because I use it for games where a point value is part of the, gamification. So I'm going to make this at least a little bit random. Our first pie wedge will be 100 points. Maybe our second one will be 200. And then I'll add a 300 as well. But I want to put in kind of like a random 0 here. And that's going to represent kind of like a lose your turn spot. Maybe there's a big one for 500. And then I'll put in some other kind of more random numbers to help fill out the rest of those pie wedges. Now I've got these numbers filled in here. Remember, the right-hand column dictates the size of the wedge. The left-hand column dictates the data in that wedge, but it's not going to show up immediately. I'm going to have to make a few changes to the settings. So I'm going to shut down the Excel spreadsheet by closing it. Well, you can see that we've got our pie chart built right here, the beginnings of our wheel. As I said before, we're just going to change a couple settings to get this to work the way that we want. So I want to make sure the pie chart is selected. And back up on my upper ribbon, I'm going to open up the chart element, go into the data labels menu, and here I'm looking for more data label options. When I click on that, it's going to open up a menu on the right-hand side of the screen. We're going to take a little bit of time here to make a few changes. The point values will show up under category name. So click on that checkbox. It will fill in the number. And now we're going to get rid of the value by unselecting that. So I've made a few changes here. Changed the font, made the text a little bit larger. I liked the white, so it offers some contrast, makes it easier to read. But what changes you make are clearly up to you, and whatever really kind of enhances what you're doing in your game. So that's our first method. Again, something that got a little bit complex with the settings, I want to offer up an alternative that you may find to be a little bit easier. Let's take a look at option number 2. Now, option number 2 works in a very similar way. I'm going to show you how to build it step by step in just a second, but as you can see, we get the same basic effect, this spinning wheel here. This was a little bit wobbly because I built it in a hurry, and it's really kind of meant to demonstrate the easy mistake that can be made. So I'm going to show you how to build this, but I'm going to show you how to build it correctly so you don't get the little wobble effect that's happening here. Now, instead of dealing with charts and pie graphs, option number 2 is what I like to call fun with shapes. Under our insert menu, I'm going to insert a shape. This shape is going to be a rectangle, but it's going to be a very specific sized rectangle. More almost like a line. And just to make it a little bit easier to see, I'm going to make that shape orange. Now, what I want to do here is be very specific about the size. It's going to be important later. So the width, I want to get about as small as I can get, and that's going to be 0.1 inches. And the height is also going to be very important later too. So I'm going to make it 6.1, and that 0.1 is also going to be very important later. I've got the size that I want, so I'm going to select our little checkbox here that just kind of locks that aspect ratio, so I can't really accidentally change it. And then the last thing I want to do is I want to align it to the center and align it to the middle. This is going to be an important thing that I repeat over and over again. In a nutshell, it's important to make sure that everything is centered in the middle of the slides. That way the build lines up properly or the shapes line up properly. In the meantime, let me go ahead and copy and make a duplicate of this rectangle shape that I just made. And then I'm going to rotate that shape 90 degrees. And then I'm going to align it up again. Align center, align middle. And now we have 2 orange shapes that crisscross dead center. I'm going to go ahead and merge these shapes and create a union of the 2. So now I have this kind of customized cross shape looking thing. This shape is just one shape, one object. And I'm going to copy and make a duplicate of that. And I'm going to rotate that again. Now this time I'm just going to rotate it 45 degrees. And that 45 degrees puts that at a perfect angle to line this back up center again and get this interesting kind of a wheel spoke type shape. Now again, this is 2 objects on screen right now. I want to combine them together, merge shapes, make a union again, and now I just have one large shape that is largely wheel spokes. We can kind of think of it that way. What I'm missing is the circle that goes around the whole thing, so let's go ahead and draw that in right now. I'm going to insert shape. It'll be a circle. And if I hold down the shift button while I'm drawing the circle out, it will create a perfect circle, not an oval. Now, if you remember, the size of my spokes are 6.1 high, 6.1 wide. I'm going to make my circle 6.0. Just slightly smaller than the spokes. And so that way, when everything lines up, centered in the middle, let me just make sure that it is. We're going to align center, align middle. And what I should have, if I send the circle back behind the spokes, is a series of spokes that slightly go outside the line of the circle. Again, that's going to be important because what I'm going to do here is use this to create separate pie wedges that act independently of each other. I'm going to merge the shapes, but this time I'm going to do it a little bit differently. Instead of a union, I'm going to create a fragment. When I fragment, it cuts everything apart and makes everything a tiny little separate shape. What I'm left with is the ability to kind of tear everything out a little bit at a time. So these little extra little wedges can come out, but more importantly, this spoked shape can come out now. And when that spoked shape comes out, I can delete it, don't need it anymore, and now I can just kind of concentrate on eliminating everything except the individual pie wedges that I've just created. Again, the reason I went this method is because I now have control over each wedge individually. This wedge is its own shape, and that means I can change its color and make each wedge unique. So I can create something festive, I can create something with certain brand colors if that's important. So here's what our wheel looks like, at least right now. And the only thing that's really left to do is add whatever information, whatever data I'm looking to add here, and that's just a simple text box. So I didn't want to bore you with the details of the build here, but you can see that I made a couple of changes. So again, I just want to kind of stress that I find this to be the easier build. You may also notice here that I have a couple of blank pie wedges I haven't filled in yet. For this, I'm just going to insert an icon, I think. Let's maybe pretend here for just a second that this is a game that has an alien theme. So I'll pull out an alien icon. I'll, just kind of size it appropriately and stick it in here. But I also want to make sure that I have it match the theme a little bit. So I'm going to change the interior color of it to white. And I will, again, copy that and place a clone of it, if you will, on the opposite space. And my wheel is all ready. Now, one essential element to your wheel build that's going to be very important to remember is just to remember that all these are a bunch of different shapes that are going to work independently of each other unless you group them all together. And sure, I can go in here and I can use the group function and group everything together so it is just one big object here. But I have found that it's also better to take the additional step and save as a picture. Now, the reason for this is very simple. When you save as a picture, it is truly one item, one element that can be moved easily through PowerPoint slides. But more importantly, when you animate it, it's easier to make sure that animation spins the way that we want it to, and it doesn't give off an effect that looks almost like it's wobbling or something like that. Okay, we've built our wheel. Now we need to create some sort of a pointer to designate which pie slice is being chosen. So let's go ahead and build ourselves a pointer. Now, a pointer can be just about anything. And to keep this simple, I'm just going to use a simple shape. In this case, we're going to use an arrow. But a triangle would work just as easily. Try to keep in mind here, the pointer doesn't necessarily have much purpose other than designating which pie wedge has been selected out of your wheel. So we've got all of our elements built. The last thing to do is to add the animation. Remember, spin is what we're going to use here, but there's going to be a little bit of detail in the settings as to what makes this work the way that we want it to work. Remember, the wheel's not going to spin on its own. It's all tied to a button. That's what we're going to get into here. Okay, here's the easy part. We just paste in our picture of our wheel, and now we add an animation. So select it, go up in the animation pane. I think we made this pretty obvious. Spin is the choice here. And there we go. We got her spinning. Now there's a little bit more to this. We have to enhance a couple of the options here. We have to make a couple selections when it comes to the settings. So let's go ahead and take a little jog over to the animation pane. Now over in the animation pane, there's a few things to change, but not too much. Our effect options are actually going to stay the same. I'm not sure really why, but clockwise is definitely the way to go with this. I think it's just a little bit easier on the eye. And these checkmark boxes should be left empty. I do think the duration should be set to 1 second. It looks just, again, a little bit smoother. And we want it to repeat. We want it to continue to repeat itself until the next click. Now, the final details on this are actually pretty important. We're not quite done building our animation, and there's a second animation we need to add to this in order for the wheel to work properly. What we're going to do is add a second animation of the wheel, and that animation is going to be just an appearance. Let's go over to the animation pane, and we can see that we have two separate animations for picture one. Picture one is our wheel. The first animation is the spin. The second animation is the appearance. Notice that they are separate. Each one is a separate animation on its own click. Yes, we're almost done. The last step is just to check those little details in the animation settings and make sure we have everything ordered properly and everything ties to what it needs to tie to. So the last thing I want to do is I want to add a button that controls these animations. And you'll see a lot of people build that button in the center of their wheel. I have a little triangle in here to indicate that's the button I'll click to play the animation. And all we have to do is just tie our animations to that button. So back on over to the animation pane. So we're going to work with each animation separately and make sure that we apply the proper settings. Our first animation is going to be the wheel animation that spins it. And under our effect options, everything has already been set. Same thing can be said about our timing options. 1 second fast, we want it to repeat until the next click. The element that needs to be changed here is under the trigger. We need to establish what triggers the animation to start. Select the second option here, and our spin button is what we're going to use to initiate or trigger the animation. That same setting needs to be applied to our other animation. And notice what's happened here. This now trigger has changed the order of our animations and made the appearance come before the spin. We do not want that. Let's make sure that we rearrange the order the way we want it. And under our appearance animation, we also want that triggered by our spin button. Now, this seems like a lot going on here, but really all we've done is we've basically told PowerPoint we want to designate a button that will start or stop the wheel spin. That's really all it's doing. So let's take a look at how that all kind of rolls out once we see it in presentation view. So here we are in presentation view. I click the button, we get a spin. I click the button, the spin stops. We can stop it and start it as much as we want. We can start it and let it run as long as we want. Now all that's left, a few final touches, something that'll make the game a little bit more engaging. Let's take one final moment here and talk about final touches. A generic wheel is really nice to know how to build, but what can you do to make it your own? What can you do to make it unique and kind of take it to the next level? In this example, I've taken some personal artwork, gave it something of a Halloween theme. I think most of you that follow my channel know that the Halloween theme is pretty typical to my games, and we'll show you how we put this in again in a more practical setting. So this is what I mean by final touches. Illustrations here are actually all custom illustrations. I've done them myself. If you don't know, I run an art channel as well. I'll put a link to the art channel down below, and it'll also be in the description if you want to go check it out. Do me a favor, though, if you're looking at my art, don't forget to subscribe. Now let's take a look at the view from the presentation mode. So again, our animation is triggered to the button in the center. I want to click it. We get our wheel to spin. I click it again. We get our wheel to stop. But if you pay close attention, you may notice that there's something swirling in the background. It's a nice little effect. Let me show you what it is. So I've removed the wheel so you can get a look at what the view is behind it. And what you may notice here is that we have, again, a spinning shape of some sort. This is really just a picture of a black hole that I found online, and I added the spin animation to it. So that's what I have for you today. I hope you learned something from it, but more importantly, I hope I inspired you to do something great with your next PowerPoint game. If you haven't done so already, don't forget to click that subscribe button. I appreciate your time. I really appreciate your attention. I hope to see you back again sometime at the Slide Hustle. Take care.